What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live. Look who's back. It's Mr. Eric Brandt. A week feels like a month to these people spending time without you on stream, Eric. So Eric's week-long hiatus is over. How was your week-long hiatus, Eric?
Definitely some very enjoyable, fun times, but also some very tough things happened as well. So don't know how much of it you want to get into here, but yeah,
whatever you want to get into, man. I'm sure the
lows.
people want to know what you've been up to.
Well, did go on vacation. Took the family up to. We didn't go very far, just up to Seattle to do the fun like Wild Waves, Great Wolf Lodge type stuff. Spend time in Seattle, that kind of stuff. And then, had some car trouble leading up to it, and then had car trouble while we were gone as well. So that kind of sucked. But also had a random emergency room visit at 2 a.m.
Oh, man.
For one of my kids not feeling well. But turns out they got diagnosed with what it was and got taken care of, got some medicine for that, so they're feeling better now. So yeah, it was kind of a rough night, but other than that, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like a roller coaster.
Yeah, it was a bit.
Yeah. So, I held it down for a week. There are a couple solo streams, but glad to have you back. Saved the talk that we're going to talk about today, which is some lineup combinations, which I did a video on, like 7 different rotations. Mm-hmm. Today, we're going to get your preferred lineup. Then I'm going to go over what I think the team will actually do and see if we agree or disagree on that. And then we'll talk about which players maybe should play a lot with each other, which player combinations we think should see the floor together, maybe players that shouldn't see the floor together, maybe, specific 5-man lineups and that sort of thing. And we will take some questions from chat. That's going to be the stream today. Shouldn't be too long of a stream. I don't want to get too caught up going into too much else. We got to stretch out content for all of August, Eric.
Yeah.
I said it on last stream. This is our first normal off season.
Yeah. The last
which is crazy
couple
to think about.
off seasons have been very rushed, so
yeah,
it feels weird to have still over a month before training camp starts, and then even over 2.5 months till the season starts. So yeah,
crazy. And last off season was a month shorter. Not only that, but we also had Olympics to talk about.
Yeah, true.
So and then the offseason before that was obviously super rushed. The season ended in October and then started back up in December, and the draft of free agency was in November. And the season before that, we had basketball at this time 2 years ago. So since starting the channel, I mean, we started it kind of, May? I think I started on my birthday, May 30th of 2019. But we didn't have anything established yet. We didn't do the twice weekly streams and whatnot. So this is really the first time where we've had a normal off season. We got to stretch out content for August, but we're going to try our best. I have some fun streams planned in the future, maybe looking at like expansion destinations beyond 32 teams. Somebody recommended something like that or brought up something like that, but we'll do that at some point, like after Seattle and Vegas, where are some good expansion destinations, that sort of thing. Team names, chat can vote on those. Things we'd like to see in the next CBA. Stuff like that, a would you rather episode will be fun. So we got a lot of fun stuff planned because honestly there's not going to be any news most likely for the next month and a half.
Yeah, and feel free for those of you in chat watching right now, if you have any suggestions on a topic for a stream over the next month or so, let us know too, and maybe we'll take you up on that.
Yep, because I still have some open slots. I've been trying to fill in stream slots, trying to come up with a stream schedule, which normally I don't do. Normally we just wing it and talk about whatever's relevant, because normally there's something relevant, but this off season it's like we gotta come up with some fun stuff for you guys. Gonna try and keep you guys entertained as always. But anyway, Eric, you want to jump into your lineup?
Sure.
You want to just jump straight into this thing? Okay, let me. Actually, I forgot to set up the capture for Photoshop because I'm going to use the same graphic I used in that video. So give me like 30 seconds to do that, and then we'll get like your minutes breakdown and whatnot. Do you kind of already know what you're going to go with, or are you like going to figure it out right now?
I mean, yeah, I've been thinking about this all off season, but yeah. So yeah, I have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I figured. I
just need
this
to
much.
like make sure I don't forget anyone.
Yeah, that was the tough part with me. I was not forgetting anyone. And you have so many players that could see minutes. I mean, there's 12, 13 guys that it took me a lot of time to come up with rotations because I kept overthinking things and who's not playing and who am I forgetting and that sort of thing. So, but I'm here to help. I've already been through this, so I'm here to help you out. All right, cool. So, ignore everything that's on the screen because this is one of the lineups I had in the video. But we're gonna go over your ideal lineup, Eric. So, starting, I don't know, you can describe it however. I'll put it in here on the screen, and then I'll compare it to my ideal lineup.
All right.
And you can have a couple contingencies, like I had my ideal lineup if Sharp wins time, and I have my ideal lineup if Jabari Walker wins time. So I'll go with whatever you want to go with.
All right. So my ideal lineup, we've talked about this before. I've struggled with this mightily ever since the Blazers selected Shaedon Sharp. Do you force him minutes, or do you risk him sitting out for a second straight year, basically, and only practicing and not getting any meaningful minutes again for another full season? And I think my answer to that is probably to force feed him minutes, so I'll probably have a little bit of time for him as well.
Okay.
But ideally, I'd like Dame to play about 35 minutes. So that would be where I start with Dame, 35.
Yeah, and let's have that discussion, short discussion on that right now. A lot of people I've seen say 32, 33 minutes, 31 minutes, just trying to keep them fresh, and I get it. But I don't think this roster is good enough to be able to afford resting him 16, 17 minutes a game. And I think the risk of potentially losing games that you should win outweighs the benefits of not playing him that extra 2, 3, 4 minutes. So I agree with you. 35 minutes a game is what I had as well.
Yeah, in my opinion, I would get rid of the whole he has to play a whole quarter. I think Chauncey was starting to do that last year, so
yeah,
it doesn't really matter that much. But I don't like the whole, oh, I play the whole first and third quarter and then I sit out for this many minutes. Like, let the game flow determine it. So some games, if the bench is increasing the lead or Simons is playing well enough to maybe play like 38 minutes some games, like he can handle that right now. If you only have to play Dame 30 minutes some games, I'm totally fine with that. But I agree that at some point Lillard's going to have to play a lot more because he's going to have to carry us a lot of the season, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So, do you stagger Dame and Ant and give all the backup point guard minutes to Ant?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. That's something that we've pretty much agreed on. I
think that's like the biggest foregone conclusion of this roster outside of obviously Nurk starting at center. But yeah, I think they're going to have to try to split up their time a little bit just to because we're seeing Ant now be good in both roles as a pull-up shooter and a catch and shoot shooter. So I'd like to have him have some time at both opportunities.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's best for him. So how many minutes per game are you thinking of for Ant? 13 at backup point. How many minutes would you play him at the shooting guard spot?
I'm probably having him play about the same as Dame, but for minute breakdown sake, I'm going to say 21 just to make it 34.
All right. 34 and 35, yeah, right there in that range. And that's the thing. This is obviously kind of an average. Like in close games, Dame and Ant might play more. Obviously, if it's a blowout, they're going to play less. This is just kind of, in a competitive game, what we would look at here. All right, so now we get into the fun part, Eric, because Dame and Ant are easy to figure out. Right? That was the easy part. Now, you have to figure out Gary Payton, Josh Hart, Shaedon Sharp, all sorts of stuff. So, what do you have next? You could go to starting small forward, or you could address the backup shooting guard position, whatever you want.
I'm gonna skip over to power forward and just fill in the main.
Okay,
things
easy.
Yeah, I'll do the easy parts first. So Jeremy Grant's obviously going to start at power forward, and ideally, I'd like him to play around 30 minutes a night.
All right, and all those at power forward.
Yeah, probably all at power forward.
All right.
I don't really like him as a backup center. I think we get away with it sometimes, but due to his inability to grab rebounds, I don't really like him playing in small ball center. So I prefer like Watford or someone else playing in those minutes. And then Nurk, I think, would also be at 30 minutes as the starting center.
Do you think he'd be capable of playing 30 minutes per game with, his conditioning? That's one aspect of it. Potential foul trouble is another. Do you think he'd be capable of getting 13 minutes a game?
I mean, I think you're probably looking at him struggling to get that much, although last year he was at 28.2 minutes a game. So I think here's my problem. I would love for him to just be at 28, and then you have another capable center just to have those 20 minutes. But I don't feel like we have another capable center on the roster as of right now. So I almost feel like we're going to feed him minutes, even if he can't handle him. Might wear him out a little bit, but we basically can't have him get injured, and we can't really afford to load manage him games and sit out, because then we're talking about Eubanks starting at center. But I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's tough, man. The center situation is very tough. That's why we wanted a little bit more depth there to make things a little bit easier, but that's not the case. So now you've done the easy parts. I don't think any other spot is easy. I think you got all the easy stuff out of the way. So where you want to go next? But first, let me thank this dono. Caleb Pendergraft, $2 dono, says, congrats on joining 750 the game, Tori. Appreciate the $2 dono, Caleb, but I am not joining 750 the game. I am partnering with somebody from 750 the game, who's Stephen Vaughn, used to work at Rip City Radio 620, and we're doing a podcast on the side with Believe Network. So I'm not joining the radio. I'm not a radio guy. But so somebody with Steven, who I've known for a while, really cool guy. So just doing that on the side once a week.
I never heard the reasoning behind him leaving for 750. Did he have a better opportunity there? So do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't,
Not your place to say. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything that
never
I
mind,
shouldn't.
sorry.
But
Steven could DM me.
yeah, I mean, like, you could probably guess, but I mean, when you're I would just ask him straight up. I don't want to say anything that I shouldn't, but business opportunities and whatnot. So is basically what I'll answer that with. But yeah, because Travis Demers left. I wish Steven replaced Travis Demers, because Travis Demers is, if you guys don't know Travis Demers, he's the radio voice for your Portland Trailblazers. He's the guy who replaced Brian Wheeler, and he had a radio show with Chad Doing on Rip City Radio 620, and he basically retired from that job, left that job, I think probably to spend a little bit more time with his family, and I think he has a couple children, young children, so I think wants, I'm not going to speak for him, but I think he maybe wants to spend more time with his family. And then obviously it's a huge commitment to doing radio play-by-play 82 games a year plus playoffs potentially for the team. So he left, and Chad Doing needed to find a replacement. I wish it was Stephen Vaughn, because I think he's good on the radio and a younger guy. Instead, he went with Dwight Janes. So it's Chad Doing and Dwight Janes now. And I'm not gonna go into that. I just wish it was Steven, man. I thought Steven deserved it, but
yeah.
Anyway, I'm like trying to tiptoe around this, but Anyway, do you want to jump just straight back into the rotation?
Yeah,
Thank you, Caleb, for the $2 dono, man. You got me on a little bit of a tangent here. Anyway. All right, back to your rotation. Let's get into the tough stuff. It was tough tiptoeing around that, and it's going to be tough to fill out these rotation spots. So what do you got next, Eric?
So, I'm just going to get this out of the way. I think we have 3 players that could all possibly win the starting small forward job. And that's Gary Payton, I think, would, if your offense is going good enough with the other 4 guys and you just need more defense, I think he's by far the best fit defensively with those starters. So I could see him winning the job. Josh Hart, for reasons you've laid out several times, makes the most sense as the starting small forward, because then you could play Nas as the backup power forward and you're not worried about being super, super undersized with your second unit.
Yeah, and you'd also have a ton of playmaking. That would be the most underrated part of that starting lineup, is like you would probably be a plus in terms of playmaking from every position. Nurkic isn't really somebody who's going to handle the ball, but we all know he can pass from the center spot. Grant can handle the ball a little bit, pass a little bit from the power forward spot. Hart definitely can at the small forward spot, and then you got Dame and Ant. That would definitely be a skilled playmaking lineup.
Yeah, and it's for that reason that my ideal lineup would actually have Nas being the small forward. And I'm hoping he plays well enough to win it outright, and that there's just... I want to hear them say, we had a battle between Peyton, Hart, and Nas for that starting spot, and Nas was like the clear-cut winner, and anyone who was in practice would completely agree with that, including Hart and Peyton. As much as they'd be disappointed too, they can deny that how well Little was playing. So hopefully that's the case. A little bit might be wishful thinking, but
I could see Nas getting the starting small forward spot. I just think Hart is way too good for Nas to like clearly win it. You know,
right.
Because Hart's phenomenal. I mean, the dude came in and averaged 27 and 4 or something like that on crazy efficiency. It was a small sample size for Portland, but Hart's just extreme, one of the most underrated players in the league. So I think that's extremely optimistic to say he'd like clear cut win it, but I could see them starting him just because he's the most prototypical 3, more so than maybe him like being head and shoulders above either of those 2 guys.
And what I hope, I mean, winning obviously is important to this. If they're winning, I don't think anyone complains. If they're losing or getting off to bad starts, for example, last year, right, we started getting off to bad starts in the first quarter. The starting lineup just was not working, and people were calling for, changes like Nance starting over Rocco, things like that. So, in my opinion, starting lineup doesn't really matter as long as everyone's getting minutes and the players that have played the best and who are playing winning basketball are in the closing lineup. So I always like the closing lineup better than starting, but I'm hoping that Nas wins that starting small forward spot.
Here's the tough part. How many minutes is he playing there? Because obviously you might play some backup for... This is what I'm curious about, is where you find the minutes for Peyton, Hart, and Sharp with Nas starting at the 3.
Yeah.
This is the part that I struggled with, too.
So, Nas played about 26 minutes a game last year. Now, when he started... I just want to see his splits for when he started. It's just total minutes. I don't see it per game. Oh wait. Starter. It was almost 30. So I would say, I'm just going to say like 28. And I may
all at small forward.
We'll say like. Well, let's see. So you start. Play like 6, 7. Let's say 14 of that at small forward.
All right, 14 at small forward. Then, do you want to fill him in as a backup at the 4? I assume. Or...
Sure. We'll do 14 there as well.
All right, 14 there as well. All right, where do you want to go next?
All right, then let's add Hart in, and we'll just make him the backup shooting guard. I guess it doesn't really matter. Both Peyton and Hart will split time there. But the reason why I'm not as opposed to Little starting as maybe you are is because I feel like even though Gary Payton's super undersized, if you have him and Hart in the second lineup, I feel like both of them play bigger than they are and can guard bigger players, and I don't really have a problem with them guarding players.
Yeah, so how many minutes at the backup shooting guard spot? All the rest, there's 27 available.
At that spot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Simons playing 21.
All right, so I'll give him all 27 there.
All right, 27 for him. All right. So now you got the backup small forward spot. You got Nasir Little playing 14 minutes, which means you have 34 minutes left over at the backup small forward spot. So what is the solution there?
I'm going to go with Gary Payton, and I am going to play him about 20 minutes.
All right. And then... So you have 14 minutes left over. I assume that's for Sharp?
Yeah, I'm going to try to squeeze Sharp in there.
All right. Sharp, 14. All right, so now you have 4 minutes left over at the backup 4, and you have 18 minutes left over at the backup center spot.
Yeah, as much as I don't like Watford playing minutes at the center, I would give 18 to Watford.
Yeah, I mean, not an easy situation with the backup center spot. You got Watford, who I like as a player, but he's super undersized, and then you got Eubanks, who I would have been much happier with him as the third string center instead of the presumptive backup, or competing for backup minutes. So Watford there. Now, only thing you have left is 4 minutes at the backup power forward spot.
I'm probably trying to squeeze some minutes to Jabari in my perfect lineup.
All right, Jabari Walker, 4 minutes, backup 4. All right. This is Eric's ideal lineup. I wonder if there's an easy way I can put mine up on the screen next to yours. I'm not going to mess with that. I'm just going to go over the differences between our ideal lineups. I gave Dame and Ant the same minutes. The only difference is I started Josh Hart at the 3 and gave him 32 minutes per game compared to 27 for you. I played Gary Payton II at the backup shooting guard spot, gave him 27 minutes per game, so basically what you have for Hart. I gave Sharp 16 minutes per game, then I played Nas 22 minutes per game at the backup 4. And then at the 5 spot, had Nurkic getting 27 minutes a game, Watford getting 15 minutes a game, and Grant playing some small ball 5, getting 6 minutes per game. So, the biggest differences was I wanted to get Hart and Peyton a little bit more time. I gave Little a few less minutes, and I played Grant a little bit as a small ball 5.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the main differences.
Totally acceptable. And also in mine, if Sharp's not ready, I have no problem waiting to give him minutes until he is ready. And, try, maybe give a little bit more minutes to Walker if he is playing well. Or, like you mentioned, Gary Payton and Josh Hart getting those minutes closer to 30 than 27 and 20, respectively.
Yeah. So that's what I struggled with was I just want to get Hart at least 30 minutes a game. I feel like anything less, given how good he played for us last year and how good he looked in Chauncey's system, 27 is a respectable amount for him for sure. I just want, that's one of the guys that I just want on the court as much as possible.
Right.
And it's easy if Jabari Walker's getting minutes because, honestly, if you're going to play Watford at some small ball 5, I think Jabari Walker could play some small ball 5.
Right.
Size-wise,
rebounding,
kind of similar, and he rebounds well. So you can it's a little bit easier because it's a little bit more balanced. But if Sharp's going to get minutes, it's really hard to it's just really hard for me to get Hart the minutes I think he deserves, Peyton the minutes I think he deserves, and then play Nas some minutes at the 3. So that's why I had Nas at the backup 4. Was just to clear up those minutes for a few more minutes for Hart and Payton. That's what I'm going to be curious to see what they do is how many minutes a game Hart and Payton play. Because I think Hart deserves 30. I think Payton, assuming he can continue to shoot the 3 ball well, should be getting about 25 a game just because he's our best defensive player. So it's like, if we're a good defensive team without Payton on the floor, then I could see him getting less minutes. But if not, then it's going to be hard to keep him off the floor.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say to that is I got this from Reese, so full credit to him, is when you have a good defender who didn't play heavy minutes, you always have to watch and see if you do play more minutes, does that take away from some of his energy or his ability to be the defender he was in limited minutes. So if you're playing him 28 minutes and his defense like suffers a little bit because he's playing more minutes, because I believe he only played about 15 to 18 minutes for the Warriors. So like you just got to be a little careful not to wear him out if he's just chasing the other team's best player around the whole game. So maybe a little bit shorter minutes is my mindset, is maybe give him less minutes, but just tell him to go all out in those minutes.
Yeah, let me look at how many minutes per game he played last year. I think it was like 16, 17, 18, something like that, in that range. Yeah, 17.6 minutes per game.
I mean, he wasn't even in the rotation until the playoffs. So.
Yeah.
I mean, January, sorry.
But it seems like he's in phenomenal shape, but that's definitely going to be one of the things, is like, when does his defense start to fall off a little bit? Like, how many minutes can he play until his defense starts to fall off? But I think it's a situation where you maybe sub him in for like 6-minute stints, like the last 6 minutes of the first quarter and the last 6 minutes of the second quarter. And that's the thing. You don't have to end the first half with your starting lineup. You obviously want to end the game with your best players on the floor in crunch time, but I think that's kind of how you maybe manage that and give Gary Payton more minutes, but also keep him energetic enough for every minute that he's on the court, is just by giving him 2 shifts of playing time each half with some rest in between, so he can go out there, play with a tremendous level of effort. Mm-hmm. And you're not playing him like 10 minutes in a row where he's getting gassed. So that could be the solution to that problem, potentially.
Right. Chris Brandlin says, I would not be shocked to see Sharp struggle and not be in the rotation by December. I actually think it'll probably be the opposite, if anything. I think if he's not ready, I think it'd be pretty obvious in training camp and preseason, and I don't think they would throw him out there if he wasn't ready. So I think maybe he could get into the rotation later in the season if he continues to improve, but I don't think he would start in the rotation if that's it. But I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking in terms of him. Like I said, I'd be scared to have him sit out another year.
Yeah. Lamarcus Moore says, no Justice Winslow. He was well-liked and played well in the system. The thing is, for Justice Winslow, we'll get into what we think the team will do, but if you want to play Justice Winslow, whose minutes are you cutting here, is my question. Whose minutes are you going to cut?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little less down on Winslow playing than you are, but
I just don't think you have the minutes available.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, we'll get into that in a second with what we think is going to happen, which is basically take out Sharp and Walker off of mine and give those minutes maybe to Winslow. But
I still think they're going to try and play Sharp, though, given what you said you've heard and some of the things that they've said about him. Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. We're going to get into it in a second. I don't want to get a little too ahead of ourselves here. But
yeah, it's not a slight on Winslow. I just feel like our best lineup is this, and I don't know. I mean, maybe you can make a case that if we're playing a small team, he could take Watford's minutes. Maybe he had good chemistry with Nurk, so maybe you play him a little bit at power forward and play Jeremy Grant a little less. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I just don't see how that works out minutes wise and keeping everyone happy.
Yep. So once again, that's my ideal lineup in case you didn't see that video. Grant, small ball center. I think you can get away with it if you have good enough rebounders around him.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think he can be like a small ball rim protector, much like Robert Covington was. There was a stat I saw tweeted today that like it was like kind of a rim protection measurement of non-centers or non-big men, and Jeremy Grant rated very well. Like, he's a guy that can block some shots, athletic, long arms. He can play some small ball five, especially if it's with a bench unit, because bench units normally go smaller. Normally a lot of bench units play small ball fives anyway, and you're not going to be putting Jeremy Grant up against Nikola Jokic with a bench unit. So I think you can get away with Jeremy Grant playing, 5-6 minutes a game at the small ball center spot. That kind of helps take a little bit of the load off of Nurkic. I had him playing 27 minutes a game instead of 30. Watford playing a few less. The problem with Grant as a small ball five, though, is the dude just does not rebound. So that would be the major worry if Jeremy Grant plays some small ball five. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, I think you have to play Nas and Josh Hart at the same time, because both those guys are solid rebounders. Hart's like a guy that can get 7-8 rebounds a game. So if you play, Hard at the 3, Nas at the 4, Gary Payton's a guy that plays hard, and you have him on the court as well, your rebounding might be good enough to get away with it. So that's where, that's kind of the lineup I had in mind, with Jeremy Grant playing 6 minutes a game at some small ball five.
And for those wondering what we're talking about with his rebounding in terms of Jeremy Grant, he averaged 4.1 rebounds last year. Playing almost 32 minutes a game. So,
and people will say, oh, well, it's Detroit. He wasn't trying in Detroit because they were losing a bunch of games. Well, if you go back and look at his stats in Denver, where he played 27 minutes a game, he averaged 3.5 rebounds. Mm-hmm. That's him at the starting 4 spot. And I talked about that in my video that I dropped earlier today. It's not that he's physically incapable of rebounding a lot better. And you had an interview with Andrew Wiggins, who had similar rebounding issues despite his physical capabilities. And Andrew Wiggins went on the podcast that our very own Evan Turner and Andre Iguodala do together. They have a podcast. They brought on Andrew Wiggins, and he was basically saying, like, yeah, I don't know what I was doing. He was rebounding, getting 12, 13, 14 rebound games in the finals, somewhere around there. Andrew Wiggins was, after being a guy who just would average 3 to 4 rebounds a game. So my hope is that somebody can get into Jeremy Grant's head and help him rebound better, because if he just rebounded better, I would consider playing him 10, 12 minutes a game at the backup 5 spot, because I think he can defensively play that spot. It's just, obviously, if you play more minutes at the backup center, that opens up more minutes at the 4 for a Jabari Walker, for a Nasir Little to play more of his minutes there, and then you can open up more minutes at the 3. It just makes things easier. The dude can't rebound, man, and I don't understand why. We're going to find out this year. We're either going to see it change, or we're going to see if it's like an effort thing. Maybe he just doesn't box out. Maybe he doesn't go afterwards. I don't know, man. It's just, the dude doesn't rebound.
I have seen plenty of examples of him not boxing out. Hopefully that's something that's correctable. But, total rebound percentage, one season of his 3 in OKC, he averaged over, it was 10.7% total rebound percentage. All the rest were well below 10%. So for a power forward who has a good wingspan of 7'2.5" and is fairly athletic, not very good rebounding. Yeah. It's puzzling to me when players are like that. So
I agree. So you have to play. That's the thing is, and when we're talking about lineups, certain players will be better at certain positions if they have complementary pieces next to them. So if you're going to play Jeremy Grant some small ball 5, you need positives in terms of rebounding the ball at the point guard spot, shooting guard spot, small forward spot, power forward spot. At least a couple of those positions. You need a Josh Hart out there on the court, who's one of the best wing rebounders in the league, just to help make up for that deficiency. So that's the thing is you have some different pieces on this team, so it'll be interesting to see how Chauncey Billups mixes and matches and maybe tries to play pairings or groups of players together that minimize individual deficiencies and create some collective strengths. That's really what Chauncey has to look at.
I'm excited for lineups with like Simons, Hart, Peyton, Grant, and like Watford, because like all those guys can grab a rebound to bring the ball up the floor. They all can play make a little bit. They can all create a little bit. So I'm very intrigued that we actually have lineups we can throw out. We have defensive lineup combinations that we haven't had in what 10 years pretty much. Well, I guess going back to like Wes and Batum, but really those were pretty much our only good defenders on those teams. And then, yeah, like we have offensive lineups, we have decent shooting lineups, we have, tough rim, like finisher lineups. I'm really excited to see some of these combinations.
Yep. Shout out Gray Hughes Investigates, $5 dono. Thank you, Gray, as always, man. He says, one problem we have is that Peyton is the perfect player for Nurkic. He cuts and sets screens, but if he comes off the bench, they won't play together. And I agree that Peyton would be a good fit off of Nurkic, assuming you had enough shooting at the other three spots next to him. I mean, shooting's a question mark with Peyton. Hopefully he continues to shoot the three ball decently, but I don't agree that they won't play together if Peyton comes off the bench. You can mix and match starters and bench players over the course of a half. So, maybe Nurkic comes out the 6-minute mark in the first quarter and then subs back in at the start of the second quarter, and you work it out so some of Peyton's and Nurkic's minutes overlap. Chauncey will have that ability. I talked about earlier how the ideal thing for Gary Payton might be to play him the final 6 minutes of the first and the second quarter. At the end of the second quarter, he could be playing with the starters. So you can mix and match players, and that's going to be interesting to see how Chauncey does that. Maybe in a future stream, we'll go over like substitution patterns or anything. I just don't have the graphics for that. I used to, but they got deleted when my computer erased everything like 9 months ago. So that can be something we can look at in the future, how we can mix and match players together. But I do agree the combination of Peyton and Nurkic would be ideal next to each other. Well,
it's much like what we saw with Winslow and Nurk last year, starting to develop some chemistry. I think that could certainly be the case with Peyton as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think like Peyton would work well with Nurkic. We've seen Justice Winslow work well with Nurkic. The problem is you probably don't want to play Peyton and Justice Winslow next to Nurkic at the same time. You probably only want to play one of those two. So that's the thing, is you can have pairings that work, but then when you take Peyton and Winslow and combine those two's shooting questions with Nurkic's, all of a sudden you just don't have enough shooting. You don't have enough floor spacing. So I just don't think you can get away with Gary Payton being the third best shooter on the floor. He hasn't proven that he's that level of shooter yet. So that's something to balance, and it's going to be tough for Chauncey this year. I think it's good that he has a year of experience because this would be a lineup that honestly he'd probably do a better job with in the lineup last year, because I think this lineup would buy in more. But managing rotations with this group of guys is not going to be easy to find the optimal lineups for. But if you do, it could be very rewarding and a high upside team. Thank you for the $5 dono, Gray. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. Shooting is going to be tough if you have both Peyton and Winslow on the floor. That's another reason why I think Winslow will eventually be the odd man out. They might try to force some minutes, maybe try like an 11 or 12 man rotation at the beginning, but I think it's going to be tough to force some minutes if the shooting's not good enough with the other parts around them.
Yeah, and I mean Peyton could start. I don't know. I could see Chauncey starting Gary Payton.
Yeah,
but
definitely think that's a possibility.
Josh Hart is just such a well-rounded player, and I think offensively fits so well next to a Dame, Ant, Grant, Nurkic starting lineup because he doesn't need the ball to be effective, but he can handle the ball and he can play make at a really high level. And with starting Grant at the 4, with how bad of a rebounder he is, you don't have any rebounding worries if you start Hart at the 3 with how good he rebounds the ball. So he kind of cancels out. You have a forward that averages 4.5 rebounds per game, and you have one that averages 8 rebounds per game. It's just your small forward's the one who averages 8, and your power forward's the one who averages 4.5. So that's why I like starting Hart, is because the rebounding, he helps out with Grant's deficiencies there, and then you're going to still see Dame get a lot of attention. You have Ant playing the CJ role. In past years, teams would load up on Dame and then rotate hard to CJ, and the Blazers would get stuck and wouldn't be able to do anything to punish the attention that Dame got. Part of that was how they set up the floor, and they didn't set up the floor with the best positioning of certain guys, and that was one of my biggest complaints under Terry Stotts, was he did not set up the floor to help beat traps of pick and rolls on Dame and so forth. But if Dame's getting trapped, with Chauncey hopefully doing a better job than Stotts did in terms of setting up the floor to beat it, and then you have Josh Hart as a playmaker next to that, with Anthony Simons, of course, and Jeremy Grant can make teams pay, all of a sudden I think you have a starting lineup that just eviscerates teams when Dame gets trapped, when Dame gets a bunch of attention. Josh Hart is 10 times the playmaker that Mo Harkless or Al-Farouq Aminu was. So that's my reasoning for wanting Josh Hart to be the starting 3.
And Jeremy Grant's better than both of those guys too.
Yeah. So with Gary Payton II, I feel like he's a much smaller, but he's more of the Al-Farouq Aminu or Mo Harkless type of offensive player.
Yeah. So AJ's asking, is the 3-point shooting of him going to be a problem? I think that's one of the reasons why they might start him. I mean, I know you have Nurk there, but between Grant, Simons, and Dame, you have 3 capable 3-point shooters and then 2 not. But I don't think it's a problem as long as he knows when to cut. And from everything I've seen of him last year, that was one of his best qualities, was knowing the timing of cuts and when to go and stuff like that. So if you're good at cutting and moving without the ball, just not standing there waiting for a 3-point shot, so when you know you're not good at them, I think you'll be fine. I don't think you have to be a good shooter. I mean, obviously it helps you be a better player, but I don't think it'll be detrimental as long as he's used and he plays the right way.
Yeah, I mean, in certain situations it's fine. In certain situations it could create problems. Like Nurkic and like Dame Nurk pick and rolls have been a staple of Portland's offense. In those situations, not having enough floor spacing in the 3 guys around that pick and roll could provide some issues. But, if you're just running a motion half-court offense, then having a guy that can cut well and, a guy who's undersized but a lob target in Gary Payton II, Josh Hart, if you give him room to cut, he's really good at not only making the right cut, but then also finishing inside, using his body, making the right kick-out pass, that sort of thing. Justice Winslow is also good in that regard. So in motion offenses, where you move the ball and move players around, I think it's fine. If you're isoing Dame, though, or running a Dame Nurkic pick and roll, that's where it could a lack of shooting could prove more problematic. So in under Terry Stotts, like, shooting was paramount because of how stagnant things were, and everything just kind of relied on Dame to create everything, and he needed the space to be able to do that consistently.
Well, Josh Hart shot something like 56% from corner 3s last year, so him and the Stotts sit in the corner forward offense might have been fine. But
let me just add this. It's not even necessarily percentage. It's just being respected as a 3-point shooter. And I think Josh Hart is just good enough where, like, teams respect him as a 3-point shooter and don't want to leave him open. So he's a floor spacer.
Here's where I'll push back a little bit on the Dame Nurk pick and roll. If you have Simons and Grant and they're spotting up for 3s, I think both of those guys are respected enough shooters to where you have to run out on them, right? Close out hard. That's something that Nurk, when he gets the ball in the middle or the top of the key, we've been screaming about this for years. Like when Derek Jones Jr. was here, he could cut every single time and get a dunk or a lay-in, right? That those cuts are open. The whole baseline area, the dunker spot, like we don't utilize those lob passes. That hasn't been a big part of the offense in the Dame Nurk pick and roll era. So if you have Simons and Grant or Hart or whoever spacing the floor with a cutting Peyton with very little opposition around the key or under the basket, I feel like Nurk could thread the needle or throw good passes to him. And yeah, as Andrew mentioned, Jabari Walker is probably good at this too. So I feel like it might open up a lot of things to have a smart cutter and not just someone who cuts every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean,
because Nurk's not driving to the rim from that position usually, right? So
yeah, I agree with that. It's just, I mean, anytime you ever have to rely on making an extra pass with a big in the paint, kind of in the middle of the floor, it is, I mean, Nurkic is a good passer in that situation, but I feel like there's a little bit higher risk for turnover. And if Nurkic is too deep and you hit a cutter, then his defender can protect the rim in those situations. So it can result in some open dunks and some good plays. It definitely needs to be an option, and especially for non-shooters. Like, I got infuriated when Evan Turner wouldn't cut in certain situations like that. When Al-Farouq Aminu and Mo Harkless wouldn't cut more. Mo Harkless did a decent job, but Aminu would just park himself in the corner. It's just a little bit easier to execute a pick and roll where the secondary read is maybe not even giving it to the big and kicking it out to the shooter in the corner, or Nurkic is able to catch the ball and kick it out to the corner. With players being more spaced out, it's harder for, somebody to stop Nurkic and then rotate back to Hart if he's 20 feet away compared to cutting into the same area. So that's where it's nice just having a guy that can do both.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you look for, is you want a guy that can do both. And both Gary Payton II and Josh Hart are good enough shooters where I am optimistic that they can do both. It's just Gary Payton before last season had never shot a decent three ball, but then last year shoots almost 36%. And Josh Hart for his career is a below average shooter and was shooting, 32, 33% in New Orleans last year, but then comes to Portland and shoots 37%, and a lot of them are like hard shots off the dribble. So that's where I'm hopeful. I just think in general it does make it easier on the offense, on the pick and roll ball handler, on the roll man, just to have three guys that can shoot around that action. Gives more space. The execution is a little bit easier, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but we saw the Warriors with like Looney, Green, and Peyton be fine. They had lineups where they had at least two of those guys on the court, and
oh yeah, you can be fine. I mean, but that's the thing with the Warriors, is they execute so well in situations like that. I mean, if we can execute like the Warriors with this lineup, we're a home court advantage team. If the other guys, other than Dame, other than Ant, can execute like the Warriors do in terms of making the right cut, making the right pass, playing out of freelance, and that sort of thing, then I have no worries whatsoever. It's tough to execute like the Warriors. That's why they've won so many championships.
Yeah, but Peyton is coming from that. Maybe he learned how to execute properly, and maybe that'll rub off on other players. But
honestly, man, ever since, because of Norm, I will never be like, oh, this player's coming from this situation, so that could help. I mean, maybe it could. I'm not saying it couldn't. It's just, with Norm, it was like championship experience. He played under Nick Nurse in a really good system. And then he comes in here and he's just, effort level's atrocious. Defense is atrocious. Attention to detail is atrocious from him. It was just a debacle. So until we have a guy who we bring in, it's like, oh, look at his last stop, he's helped us do some of those things here. Until we see a positive example of that, Norm just leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully Gary Payton's an energy guy and the kind of guy who was the exact opposite in terms of energy and stuff. So I'm not as worried about that, I guess. But so let's just like play this out. So Dame gets a pick from Nurk, right? Nurk gets a good screen. The big has to stay or hedge or whatever on Dame, right? And then Dame passes to Nurk. Nurk gets the ball around the free throw line. One of the other three defenders has to come up from their spot to guard him, right?
Yeah.
Are you with me so far?
Yeah.
So that leaves the other two defenders guarding three players, which is, like I said, Simons, Grant, and Peyton. So if you have Simons spotted up on one side, Grant spotted up on the other side, and you have Peyton, underneath on the baseline, they have to choose which one to guard. And I feel like Nurk from the free throw line can easily pick that apart. And I don't feel like if you execute it properly, that the players can recover. We saw that obviously last year especially with Zeller, where he had a lot of trouble recovering fast enough when he had to hedge too long or whatever. So either that's the case. So we have basically Nurk just standing at the top of the key trying to pick which one of the three players is open to pass to, which I absolutely trust him in those situations. Or we have it to where Dame's not going to see as much attention off the screens because we're killing him with the roll man, with, in this case, Nurkic, passing with his passing ability. So I feel like there's not really an easy way to stop that if you're executing it properly.
Well, when it comes to trapping the pick and roll, it comes down to, can you hold things off behind that to give the trapping defender enough time to recover to his man? Mm-hmm. Because if you're able to do that, then you're able to basically recover out of your rotations back to your initial assignment. So, you got to make, Nurkic has to make a quick read there, and he's certainly capable. It's just there's certain timing elements that are crucial with it. And, you'll have smart defenders who will be guarding Gary Payton if he's on the block, and he'll take a step towards Nurkic's roll trying to bait a pass, and then he'll jump back and deflect the pass. And in, the best case scenario for Portland is you're making them rotate fully as a team, right? Pick and roll gets trapped. Guy guarding Peyton rotates up to Nurkic. Somebody guarding Grant or Simons on the wing has to rotate down to Peyton, and somebody has to rotate out to their guy, and you're making the whole team rotate. But the best defenses, especially if they're switchable, can still make those rotations. Mm-hmm. So if you have extra shooting out there, those rotations end up being longer, and you're not able to make them as quickly. So if you're not rotating promptly at the right time, it's easier to expose if those rotations also have to be longer compared to maybe a little bit less spacing. So that's why it is beneficial to be able to have a guy that does both. You certainly, the Warriors just execute so well that they do what you're talking about and execute that and get a lot of easy buckets off of that. It's just if you don't execute it consistently well, it can lead to some difficulties, so to say. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. I just watched, for years, that's been our biggest problem on defense is we always get stuck with, it's usually Nurkic, and then everyone's like, oh, Nurkic sucks at defense, right? Well, he's having to choose like multiple times a game between trying to stop a guy with no resistance going right down the middle of the key, or the guy he's supposed to be guarding from catching a lob pass, and he has to make a decision on which one to stop. And I just like to be the team that puts the other
absolutely
team in those positions more often,
The problem is when you're so atrocious defensively as a team, it's a lot easier to execute those types of things.
True.
That's the thing, is we've seen teams do it to us consistently. A big part of that is we've just sucked defensively. Mm-hmm. So when I think of certain actions and certain floor setups, like I'm thinking about could this work against a top 10 defense? Because that's what it comes down to. Blazers need to make some noise in the playoffs, go on a run at some point. Maybe it's not this year. Hopefully at some point in the next 3-4 years, they're able to go on a deep playoff run again and have a chance to contend. But in order to do that, you're going to go up against top 10 defenses. And you're going to have to execute offensively against those top 10 defenses, which are going to be playing harder than they do in the regular season. They're going to be allowed to be a little bit more physical than they are in the regular season. So it's something that works in the regular season might not work in the playoffs. And I've been a big proponent of isolation-heavy offenses can work in the regular season where you just ride a star and he carries you all year long. But then in the playoffs, when teams will game plan for them harder, know their tendencies better, be able to be more physical with them on the ball and whatnot, all of a sudden you're going to run into some trouble offensively. And that's the biggest reason why, in my opinion, you saw the Blazers get a 3 seed in 2018 and then get swept by the 6 seed New Orleans Pelicans. Dame got trapped. You can't just run pick and roll in isolation in the playoffs against good defensive teams. So that's the nuances of discussing offense. And what boils down to that is what skill sets do you have on the floor, and that boils down to lineups. You know, that's the nuances of coaching a team.
Well, they could do some interesting stuff with like Peyton and Nurk, or Hart and Nurk running pick and rolls with Dame and Ant spacing the floor, you know, and Grant. So I think there's different things they can do. But the biggest challenge would be, in my mind, would be if Dame's getting trapped, him getting the ball out of those traps, or us maybe like not putting him in a position where he's not having like space to pass out of there. But let's just say we're playing the Clippers at full strength, right? And it's the beginning of the game. You probably have either Kawhi or Paul George on Dame, right? But you probably have Zubac has to guard Nurk most likely. He can't really guard anyone else. So if they switch that, you got a mismatch with Zubac guarding Dame. If they don't switch, Dame could probably get around that quick enough to create space, and then so I think it could work out with even with a non-shooter on the floor, but you do have to really make sure you're locked in with your execution.
Yep, absolutely. So this is what you guys will get during the regular season. We'll break down this type of nuance in post-game shows and whatnot. So if you joined us this offseason, we have a lot of new subscribers this offseason. This is what we talk about in post-game shows. There's a lot to talk about if you're truly breaking down the game of basketball and some of the nuances of it. So we'll try and, as we've always done, we'll try and do our best of breaking it down in a way that you guys can understand. I wish we could show footage and break down footage. That would make things a lot easier, and it would make for a freaking phenomenal product, but I think we do a pretty good job considering we can't use footage.
Did you see that NBA is going and like getting channels in trouble that have like old NBA games on them and stuff? So like YouTube's losing a lot of old games that you can watch and stuff. It's really a shame.
I mean, yeah, but that doesn't surprise me.
I know, it doesn't surprise me at all, yeah.
The deal back in the day was you could use something with highlights, but it couldn't be more than 9 minutes and 45 seconds. But then some videos would just do highlights on commentary, and they'd be fine if it was 15 minutes. You know, it's hard to say, because YouTube has the power. They can go and like copyright strike channels if they want to. And get channels terminated if they want to, if they use footage. Like, they have the power to do that. Now, there's no incentive for them to do that, as, you know, they make money off people's videos that use highlights in them. They just copyright claim it, which is different than a strike. And then they make revenue off that, and it's advertisement for the NBA. You know, it's an NBA product that they're able to make money off of without having to do any work whatsoever. So they don't go out and strike and take stuff down and take down channels and whatnot, but it wouldn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that they're doing that with full game footage of classic games. So yeah, it sucks for viewers that want to see that. For, you know, you're able to see that for free basically with some ads on it most likely, but it doesn't surprise me at all, and that's why I never ever wanted to mess around with showing highlights on the channel, or at least like I did some at the very, very start. Since then, haven't messed around with it for that reason. I always get questions, and I will continue to get questions on it, but it's just not. It's not worth worrying about it and whatnot. And when it comes to streaming and showing footage, I think that can really get you into trouble. So, you know, I wish we could, man. I wish we could go to the NBA, and I wish I could say, hey, if we give you guys $100 a year, can we break down highlights? You know, shoot, I would pay to break down highlights because it'd be phenomenal. But instead, we do our best with our words. Anyway, do you want to look at my official lineup prediction and see what you disagree with?
Sure.
Let's do that right now. All right. Let me pull this up here. Where do I need to go to? All right. So it's not this. It is. Let me put it in here. This is my official lineup prediction. Okay. I have Simons playing 33 minutes a game, Dame playing 35, pretty much what we had. I have Hart playing 26 minutes a game. 6 of those minutes are at the backup shooting guard spot. 20 of them coming at the backup small forward position. I feel like Nasir Little will be the starting 3. I feel like he makes sense as an on-ball defender and being a guy that has some size and some length that you can put up against some of the bigger forwards, and he can guard them on ball. And then I think the hope will be he can clean up things off the ball, and you'll likely be able to see if he's cleaning it up in training camp. And if he does, I think he will be the starting 3. And then I think Eubanks will be the backup 5. I think Winslow will play 18 minutes a game. So I have him getting 18 minutes a game at the backup 4. I have Nas getting about 20 minutes a game. Peyton getting 22 minutes a game, Hart getting 26, and then I have Sharp playing 12 minutes a game. I think he will see some time in the lineup. So, what is your prediction, Eric? What do you disagree with?
Probably say Winslow gets a little less minutes, maybe Eubanks a little less minutes, and you maybe move Grant down a few minutes too and give a few more minutes to Nas, at least into the 24 minutes. Man, I really don't know what Sharp would do, man. I don't know what they're thinking. I think Eubanks will play like you have, but I don't know if he'll play that much. I think they might try to limit it. It's more like 12.
So then what else do you do at the back? What else do you think they'll do at the backup center spot?
I think Watford will get some minutes. Actually, it wouldn't surprise me if Watford beats out Eubanks for the backup minutes. But, yeah, it's tough because they have so many guys that you'd think they're high on and they want to play. But unfortunately, I think when it comes down to it, I think they'll justify Sharp and Walker being rookies, and they won't get many minutes. So I'll probably just cut them out completely for now. Here,
I'll put together what your prediction is. So, how many minutes per game do you think Nurkic gets at the starting center spot?
Let's do 28.
28, and then like Eubanks and Watford split.
Let's see, at least 20.
10 a game for each.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think at least initially they might just let it play out on the court who's playing better to win that spot, but yeah.
Yeah. Do you agree with the prediction? Obviously, we went through what you would want to happen, but do you agree with the prediction, which is different, on Nasir Little starting?
I think that Little will earn the starting spot, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if any of the 3, like I mentioned, start. But I feel like they really like Little a lot, and they want him to win that. And I think he'll have that advantage going into training camp, that everyone is rooting for him to win the starting small forward spot. Yeah. So unless he really struggles or something in training camp, which I don't think will be the case, considering I think it was last training camp, everyone was raving about how good he was playing, right? So I doubt that would change in one offseason. But I think they will play Little at the beginning of the year at starting small forward.
Yeah. So you don't think Sharp or Jabari Walker get minutes?
I don't think initially they do.
Okay. So initially, what else would you change? We got the center spot. Simon's playing 34, Dame playing 35. It's probably in the ballpark.
Yeah. I'd probably give Winslow some minutes.
All right. So you're thinking like Winslow backup 4.
Yeah, so he's maybe move Little would be up to, he could play 28 minutes then at small forward.
Yeah, like you could go something like Winslow 18, Grant 30. I feel like it'd be more so Grant 32, Winslow 16.
Yeah, I mean I could see a case for that. Grant played 31.9 minutes last year. That was on a team where he didn't really have anyone pushing him for minutes.
It's just like hearing Dame talk about him, and,
right.
It's like this is the type of forward we've needed for so long. Like it just feels like 30 might be slightly low in terms of prediction. That's why I had him with 32. But I mean, honestly, this is probably the most straightforward prediction. I think I'm more confident in this prediction than my own prediction. Part of this prediction was Joe Cronin said Grant could play some small ball 5, and open up more minutes there. I mean, that's the thing is making a prediction is tough because they've raved about
like
Shane
12 different
Sharp.
players. Yeah,
Jabari Walker looked great. They apparently love Keon Johnson, and he looked good in summer league. But he doesn't have a pathway to minutes. Yeah. So it's like where do these guys just not play? Like, if they play, how many minutes? And then if they're playing too many minutes, then guys that are better aren't playing enough. So it's really hard to make a prediction this year. Maybe the hardest year in terms of predicting an overall lineup.
Yeah, and I could easily see, Little and Grant playing 2 minutes less, and Hart and Peyton playing 2 minutes more each. That, like, it's not that specific. And like I said, maybe they play Watford first, give him first crack, and if he struggles, they bring in Eubanks in the second half or something, or they just try, one half this player plays in the, into the first, beginning of the second, and then in the second half, the opposite player plays into the third quarter, beginning of the fourth, unless the first player does really well, and then he gets that game, and then, I don't know, maybe coach says, like, next game it's your turn or whatever. I don't know, but Phillips is definitely going to have to be creative like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, that's my prediction, and then this was Eric's. Pretty similar. Couple of key differences there. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the lineup. That's going to be a fun storyline. It's going to be fun preseason just to see who starts. I assume they'll mix up starting lineups in preseason. That's going to be something we'll talk about in preseason, though, is which starting lineup looked the best depending on who that starting 3 is. Because you got 4 of the starting spots locked down. That starting 3 spot is a complete wild card. And, I mean, last year we knew our starting lineup.
Right.
We absolutely knew our starting lineup. The year before, what was the starting lineup? Because we didn't have Norm. What was it in the year before? We had... Oh, it was Derek Jones Jr.
Yeah.
And there were some question marks whether he would start or... I forget who else. Why am I blanking so much? The starting 3 wasn't clear-cut then, but the starting 4 was Rocco. The starting 5 was Nurkic. Starting backcourt was obviously Dame and CJ. So... but you didn't have the competition for the starting 3 spot in 2020 like you do now. Now you have 3 guys that are legitimate options to start there, and in 2020 it was like just kind of a mess.
In 2019 we had Dame, CJ, Hood, Zach, and Nurk.
Yeah.
So Nurk wasn't there. We had Whiteside, but Nurk would have been if healthy. But
yeah, and we knew what the starting lineup was then. So I think this is actually the most intriguing starting position battle since I can remember. And I'm blanking on a couple years ago, so I'm definitely not really remembering, 5-6 years ago. But
we had Gary Trent. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, Gary Trent. Yeah, but I mean, he was always looked at as more of a shooting guard type, and hadn't broken his way into the rotation. I just think this is the most intriguing position battle in quite a while.
I just hope whoever, because there's going to be two guys mad that they aren't starting. I just hope that they take it out on the opposition and not lose them like we lost Chauncey not Chauncey, Norm and Roca last year.
Yep, absolutely. Anyway, is there anything else you wanted to cover in terms of lineups or certain player combinations or anything?
In terms of lineups, I just want to get this out of the way for anyone wondering about these guys. Keon, Didi, Greg Brown, I don't think those guys have any chance of playing. Like, I just don't see them beating out any players ahead of them. I don't
what sucks
know how
is,
they
like,
get an opportunity. Yeah.
Those three guys, it's like Keon's clear cut ahead above both those guys.
Right.
Like, Didi just did no. Greg Brown provides some athleticism and some defense, but he's still a couple years away. Keon, I feel like, for a worse team without much guard depth, could easily play 20 minutes again next year.
Yep.
Like, he's defensively, athletically capable, his shot's looking better, showcase some playmaking skills. Like, Keon could play. The problem is he has so many players in front of him. So it almost feels criminal to, like... I absolutely agree with it. It just almost feels criminal to put Keon Johnson's name in the same boat as Greg Brown III's and Didi Lozada's.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've talked about... 12 players playing between Eubanks, Winslow.
Yeah.
If you include those guys, Jabari and Sharp, whether or not you're playing him. So Keon would be the 13th guy. And it's like, out of the top 12, I mean, he can't play any of the forward front court positions. So, I mean, who's he taking minutes from the backcourt? I would love to sit here and say, oh, he could earn minutes if he continues to improve like he's showing. I just don't get it. But yeah, Greg Brown and Didi are definitely going to be the two inactives unless there's injured players. But yeah, I feel bad for Keon. It's one of the reasons why we never liked him, because we had this problem. And even after trading CJ and Norm, you would think that would clear up room for him, but no, we still have a glut of guards. So like, I don't get how to make it work with him.
And that's where I wish, that's where I'd be on board with trading Keon Johnson for a better backup center, because you're able to give Keon a better opportunity somewhere else. And then you're also, if you upgrade the backup center spot, then you'd be talking about Eubanks and Watford not being in the rotation, and that'd clear that up, and you would just have that backup center instead, and it would balance the team better and make the rotations a little bit more clear cut. But obviously, I don't think Chauncey Billups really cares about lineups being clear cut for the fans.
Right.
I don't think the organization cares about the fans being able to speculate easily. It's about putting the best product on the floor, as it should be. So,
well,
I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm really looking forward to this year and how they balance this.
To Janot's point, I mean, yeah, if we have injuries, of course, you could get some playing time. But then, do they play him over Sharp? Or like that'll be one of the interesting things. If like Keon's clearly better in practice, but they want to develop Sharp, like how does that dynamic play out? I just think that's a really tough position for coach.
Yeah, I mean, like if Nas is the starting three and he's playing well, and then Sharp is good enough to get minutes and maybe he's getting spot minutes, but then you have let me think about this. Like, if you had Josh Hart get hurt, you still have Gary Payne II. You still have Nasir Little. You have Shaden Sharp. You have Dame. You have Ant. There still might not be minutes at a perimeter spot for Keon Johnson. That's the issue. So, if you have two of those guys get hurt, if Gary Payton II and Josh Hart get hurt, then Keon Johnson's gonna play.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think one injury is going to clear enough time for Nas to play the majority of his minutes at the 3, and then enough time for Sharp and Keon Johnson to play. Even with one injury, you still have enough guys where Keon Johnson's probably blocked out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the problem, and that's why I'd still be on board with moving him to a better situation for him. Maybe in the long run, it's like, wow, we gave him up, and now he's a starting 3-and-D guard who can play, make, and slash, and like, oh, we should have kept him. And, I might be sitting there in the future like, wow, we did this terrible Clippers trade. All we got back was Keon Johnson. But if we kept him, it could have justified the trade, but then we traded him. Like, but it's just... I don't know here if Keon Johnson ever develops into that guy simply because he might not get the reps.
I think he needs the minutes.
So that's the problem, is like you trade him somewhere else, he could blow up and it could look really bad. But if you keep him, he might not get the reps to turn into anything. So it's a tough spot to be in. And that's why that's one of the smaller reasons, but still a reason why I was frustrated with the Gary Payton II signing. Now I'm on board with it, but it was like we got Keon Johnson, we have all this perimeter depth, and we're just adding to it. It didn't really make much sense to me. The positive thing is Keon Johnson could play in the Gary Payton II role. Obviously not as well, but could do some of the same things as a defender and an athlete.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is Keon hasn't shown the ability to guard bigger players like Payton has.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
He's
I
not
think that
Gary
was
Payton II.
But I think... I don't know. When you combine that with drafting Sharp, signing Peyton, the rumors about Thibault and all these Bruce Brown who we targeted, like, it's all seemingly guys who, if they were really high on Keon Johnson being that defensive specialist at the guard position, I don't know if they're targeting them this summer. So I think despite what they tell you out loud, I think their actions show that they don't think Keon's ready for a role yet. Now, they could still be high on him. Both things could be true. They can both still want to develop him and think he could be that eventually. But I think the fact that they targeted, and most of their targets were smaller wing defenders, that shows you that they're not confident of Keon being ready for that this season.
Yeah, agreed.
Which is totally fine because he was a rookie last year. It's not like he is 25 or something. Yeah.
What, 20?
Something like that. Yeah.
Let me look it up. Keon Johnson age. His age is he's still 20 years old. He doesn't turn 21 until March. He's extremely young. He's almost as young as Jabari Walker. Jabari Walker's young for a 2-year college player though, so that's the thing. We have some guys that maybe would seem a little bit older than they are. Jabari Walker's barely 20. Keon Johnson's 20. So these guys got some time. Keon is only 10 months. I think you mean older, Andrew. But yeah, Keon's only 10 months older than Shane Sharp.
And here's the deal. Keon, it's very likely that he outplays Sharp in practice, right? But we spent the number 7 pick on Sharp. We need him to develop and be better than Keon Johnson. So
yeah, he has more upside than Keon Johnson, so you buy into that.
Even if Keon is a little better, that's almost a bad thing because I feel like that means we picked the wrong player in the draft if that's the case, if Keon turns out to be a better, even if he was like really, really good. So I just hope that that's not the case to where Sharp looks so bad that you can't even beat out Keon Johnson for minutes.
Yep. DJ Vega TV says, Torrey tends to have immediate overreactions. GP2, Derrick Jones Jr., and us moving back to 7. He ended up being okay with all those things after a week, but was furious in the moment. Here's the thing with Gary Payton II. If you paid attention to why I was frustrated with that signing, you would realize that makes no sense, because none of the reasons that I was frustrated with that signing I changed my mind on. But the reasons were, a lot of it was geared towards what people had said to us in the past in terms of you can't play small, and we defended it. But then offseason last year obviously went to crap, and the team fell apart, and I was concerned too much with size. So I guess that's what changed. Well, but I said from the get-go last year, Eric, that you could win with a small team if you were competitive and you were scrappy and you let that make up for your lack of size, right? I've been on the record saying that. So a lot of the frustration with Gary Payton II was because of worrying about what other people had said and arguing with people on that. Once I took a step back from that and kind of focused on what I actually thought about it, I was okay with it. But that's the thing. Like, of course I was frustrated we didn't get a top 3 pick. Just because I accept, okay, we got the 7th pick, doesn't mean that I overreacted to being frustrated getting the 7th pick. I wanted a top 3 pick. I still wanted a top 3 pick. You could replay it today with me knowing who we got at 7. I'd still be just as frustrated.
Because
look at Paulo, man.
Bankero looks like a star.
Yeah, I mean... So give me a break, man. Like, of course I'd be frustrated if we don't jump up into the top 3, like, in the lottery. Anybody would. Any reasonable fan would be.
Yeah. Anyway. And, I mean, I was frustrated too, so it's not just you. And it was because of the hard cap, and because, like I've said several times, Katie, right this minute, could say, I will only play for the Portland Trailblazers, and the Nets could be like, okay, screw all these other teams with these lowball offers. I just want to give him to the Blazers, and we couldn't do the trade. Like, we could literally not do the trade because of signing Gary Payton. It's more like that. It just kind of ruins any kind of fun we could have had this summer of trades or stars or whatever, which was the whole point of everything that people told us last year. Cronin's going to balance the roster. Watch, he has all this flexibility. Things are going to be different now. And then he drafts a guard and signs a guard in free agency. And it was just like, what? Like, it's the same. Like, yes, it can work still. We still believe that what we said all of last year is true if you have the right players and the right coaching and stuff. But, like, I still feel like it kind of was like pulling out the rug from, like, here's what we're gonna do. Oh, never mind. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And that was just frustrating. Like, it was like weird. Like, I just didn't know how to react at first. Like, because it was like why? Like, why? I don't know.
Yeah. So I mean, for all those reasons, none of those reasons have changed. And being frustrated for those reasons, I don't think is an overreaction. I think that's justified. But Vegas says in the comment section, no, you said now we screwed our chances of winning a championship with Dame because we had to draft Keegan Murray at 7. Man, if you're frustrated about something, like, that's the thing. If you're hanging out with friends, you're going to make a joke like, I wasn't super high on Keegan Murray. I mean, he's looked great in Summer League. I haven't really changed my mind on him, but I wasn't super high on Keegan Murray. So, A, that was partially a joke. B, that was venting in a tongue-in-cheek comment, man. Like, if you're hanging out with some friends watching the lottery and that happens, you're going to say, oh, no, now we're going to get this prospect I don't want. Like, it's not that serious, you know? So, if you're taking that comment totally seriously, that we had no chances of winning a championship because of Keegan Murray, then I don't know what to tell you, man. Maybe just take us slightly less seriously when we're frustrated with something, or at least me, because I'll make comments like that and they're not 100% serious, man. The running joke has been I'm not a Keegan Murray fan.
You'll continue to push that too.
I mean, Keegan, if he ends up being a 25-point per game scorer and borderline superstar, then I'm wrong on Keegan Murray. Okay? I always thought Keegan Murray could average 18 to 20 points per game as like your third scorer, maybe your second scorer, but probably not on a really good team. Nothing has shown me otherwise. He could score the ball in college, and he scored the ball well in Summer League. Like, no, I don't see how... Like, people have actually said to me that I've been proven wrong on Keegan Murray, and it's like, the dude has been able to score at levels below the NBA. And I'm not saying that he can't score in the NBA. My whole thing was, I don't see him being a potential 25-point per game scorer or an elite defensive player, so I don't think the upside is above other guys that I would take ahead of him. Nothing's changed that. We'll wait and see. He could absolutely prove me wrong, and if he proves me wrong, then he proves the Sacramento Kings right for a change when they went against the grain, and the world's upside down. And that might be fun to see, so we shall see.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. Anything else, Eric?
Thank everyone for watching. It's been a fun stream, and give us your ideas, whether it's on Twitter or Discord or whatever. If you have any ideas for shows, you feel nervous about typing in chat or whatever, you can always hit us up or DM me or the channel or whatever, and we'll consider your ideas for shows.
Yep, absolutely. Always looking for more ideas to try and give you guys what you want. Dropped a video earlier today. If you want to watch that, then hopefully that's something that I gave you what you want. Video coming tomorrow, Trade Talk Tuesday, and then a couple videos planned that I've put off. Man, this heat wave is killing me. I don't have any AC in here. And I was talking about, I'm going to record, daily. I just don't want to record when my room's 90 degrees, man. It's just something about it. I just don't feel comfortable, and I just don't feel like recording. So it's still pretty hot now. This room just gets super hot, especially when I stream or leave my computer running or that sort of thing. My computer just heats this room up. So I'm not as lucky as you. I don't have, a Seattle or a Great Wolf Lodge vacation on the way. But
the water felt nice, but it was definitely hot, like walking around.
Yeah. I think I'm going to the beach in a couple weeks. That's something. That's something. At least it's something, man. It's like the one time of the year I get outside of the Portland area. So looking forward to that. But anyway, hopefully all you guys are having a good summer. We will keep the content coming. Like Eric said, let us know if you have any ideas for anything, merch even, because I'm starting to work on that. And yeah, we're all ears. Anything else?
Well, have a good night, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep. That's a wrap for this episode of Blazers Uprise Live. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.